the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And do we have any additions to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
And do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That will take us to public comments. If there is anything that anyone would like to discuss that is not on the agenda, please come forward. Seeing none, we will close public comments and move to the consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that anyone would like to pull for further discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. We have a motion from Councilmember Stephen McPadden. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And a second from Councilmember McNeely. Any further discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That will take us to City Council report 6A. Any reports from any meetings or anything to discuss? Anyone? And I have none. I have not been to any meetings since our last council meeting. So we'll move on from council reports and go to B1 if we could.
Okay, Mayor and Council, in front of you is the assessment agreement with Carver County. We contract with the assessor or the county assessor's office to do our assessing. Each year they send us a kind of a contract with the new pricing. This year it'll be, if you look in the contract compared to last year, there'll be a 50-cent increase in each category. So I believe that's residential, industrial, and agricultural. That's on page 40, the payment amount under section 3. So it's the city, it's a state statute requirement that the city do appraisal of properties within the city, at least on like a 5-year circulation. I don't know what the circulation is right now, but each property does have to get assessed within those 5 years, like in a cyclical manner. So this is just the contract for next year's services, and so resolution 10/23/1737 approves that contract, and it's for the council to approve and discuss.
Perfect. And it's just a routine, we do this every 5 years, and it looks like they'll just do a percentage of the homes.
Yep, they do a percentage every
Perfect.
on this cycle.
All right, I'll look for a motion to approve resolution 10-23-17-37, approving the contract with property assessment services with the county assessor for 2018.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And that'll take us to B2.
Okay, B2. In front of you is resolution 10/23/1738, providing for the issuance and sale of the $2,960,000. Sorry, I apologize, that's incorrect on the front page. General obligation sewer and water refunding bonds, Series 2017A, and pledging for the security thereof net revenues. This was at a previous council meeting where this was discussed. It is debt that the city needs to issue the remainder. We're refinancing it, and it's debt that the city needs to issue the remainder of the previous water and sewer projects that were taken out in the past. And the next step is to issue the bonds. We have Chris from Ellers here to kind of give us some more information on that and to, give us some updates on how that went.
Perfect. We'll turn it over to you then, Chris. Thank you for coming.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Thank you, Maggie. My name is Chris Mickelson. I work for Ellers and Associates. I work very closely with Todd Hagan. Todd is the City of Mayor's primary municipal advisor. He was unable to attend this evening's meeting, and so he asked me if I could attend it in his place, and I'm very happy to be here. As Maggie said, the city, the Ellers recently assisted the city with a refinancing of some existing debt, the Series 2007A bond issue. And the way that municipal bonds are refinanced, you issue what are called refunding bonds. And the refunding bonds are the new bonds that are used to call the old bonds. And typically you're going to do that to achieve interest cost savings. So you would do what's referred to as a high to low refunding, which is what this is, a refunding that's done to achieve an interest cost savings. You can also do it to change bond covenants or to change the structure of a debt issue. That's not being done here. We're using the same covenant, same structure, but really just achieving an interest cost savings by doing this refunding. And so at 10 o'clock this morning, we closed the bids for the competitive bidding. We received 6 bids from national banks and underwriters that bid on these refunding bonds for the City of Mayor. And so if you refer to your sale day report that's in front of you, we can just briefly walk through this. So as I mentioned, this refunding was done to call the Series 2007A bonds. This is what's referred to as a current refunding because those bonds are callable now or within the next 90 days. So this is not an advanced refunding, it is a current refunding. As a part of this process, the city obtained a new rating through Standard & Poor's rating service, and a AA rating with stable outlook was achieved. So the city, the S&P affirmed the city's AA rating. And as I said, the 6 bids were received, the low bidder being Northland Securities, and that came in at just under 1.55%. And the high bid was just over 1.73%. And so the spread between those two translates to an interest difference of just over $25,000. As Maggie said, the principal amount in this issue has actually been reduced by approximately $175,000. We're able to do that because the winning bidder, in this case Northland Securities, used what's referred to as a premium pricing structure. So as a result of being in this low interest rate environment, to make the bonds more marketable to retail investors, what underwriters will do is they'll price the bonds above par, which then allows them to increase the coupons, which then allows you to take those additional proceeds and pay down the bond size so that it basically cancels, but it allows them to then market and sell a bond that has a coupon of 2% or 3% as opposed to what's actually being reoffered as a yield to the investor, which you can see the reoffering yield on the bid tabulation ranges anywhere from 1% to 1.7%. So they feel that by giving the issuer a little bit of extra premium by pricing these above 100, that allowing them to bump up the coupons a little bit, they should be able to sell these a little bit easier. But again, that allows you to reduce the bond size. In this case, $152,000 was achieved in reoffering premium. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we were able to reduce the bond size. Another being that they took a little less, Northland took a little less underwriter's discount. Underwriter's discount is the compensation that they basically pay themselves for underwriting the transaction. I believe we set this up for as much as 1.2% underwriter's discount, and I think they only used somewhere in the ballpark of 0.53%. So they left quite a bit of underwriter's discount on the table. And then a little bit of cost of issuance decrease, a few $1,000. And so when you combine all that, you're left with $175,000 in principal reduction. As I briefly touched on, the reoffering yield, which you can see on the first page of the bid tabulation, ranges anywhere from 1 to 1.7%. That's the yield that the end investor will ultimately achieve by investing in these bonds. By doing this transaction, the city is achieving future value savings of over $236,000. That is a final number. That's not an estimate. And present value savings of $225,000. This translates to just over 7% of that $3 million amount in total. If we just quickly move to the bid tabulation page, on here you can see the 6 underwriters that bid, and you can see that this attracted bids from Wisconsin, from Tennessee, Ohio, Illinois. So really, underwriters from all over the country were bidding on these bonds, which really speaks to the demand that's in the market right now, which leads to a tremendous result for the city in this case, just over 1.55 or just under 1.55%. And also the fact that the city has such a strong AA credit definitely creates more demand, creates a stronger market for the purchase of these bonds. So we're very pleased with the way the sale closed out at 10 o'clock this morning. And then the next thing to touch on would just briefly be the total issue sources and uses page that lays out the way the 2007A bonds are structured for this refunding and what that par amount ultimately totals. You can see there's the reoffering premium, the $152,000 amount that we discussed earlier, and that underwriter's discount again being less than half of what we originally estimated they would take, COI being a few $1,000s less than what we had originally estimated, ultimately leading to the same $2.88 million that would be deposited into the current refunding fund. And also the rounding amount is just a little bit less in this final version as well, just because bonds are sold in multiples of, or in amounts of 5,000, in increments of 5,000. And so to get to that $5,000 amount, you have to round, one way or another. We had to round a little bit more in the previous, the pre-sale estimates, and just rounded a little bit less to get to that 5,000 here. The next page lays out the final debt service schedule. And again, this is not estimates. This is if this issue is accepted by the City Council, this would be the final debt service schedule. And then the next page shows the debt service comparison, what the old debt service would have cost the city, what the new debt service will cost the city, and there you can see the future value savings of just shy of $237,000. And the number that we use most commonly is the net present value benefit to present value refunded debt service, being 7.118%. We consider anything above 3% to be a strong candidate for refunding. So to achieve over 7% is a very strong refunding outcome. So we're very pleased with that. And the final page of the MUNEX runs is the debt service to maturity and to call. So the last thing that I think I'll touch on here is the ratings report that Standard & Poor's provided. And I think the few key points that I would like to touch on, one would be that S&P found the city to have a strong economy, and that's a result of the city participating in the combined Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan statistical area, as well as the city having a high relative per capita effective buying income. 112% is very strong and speaks to how good the local economy is here, as well as a per capita market value of $82,000. Again, that's a very solid number. And that market value growth of 8.6% in the past year is something that also is definitely leading to such a strong AA credit rating. When S&P determines the rating that they'll assign to a debt issue, they actually consider 7 components in their methodology. Those 7 are the bullets that are just above where it says strong economy, and they actually place 30% on the economy, and so that is the highest weight of the 7. And so to have a strong economy really sets the city on a great starting position for the rating. That is the highest weight in their rationale. The second thing that I would touch on is the City of Mayor's very strong budgetary flexibility. And what they're referring to here is if they see a community that has anything above 75% of expenditures, or of anything above 75% of fund balance relative to expenditures, then they're going to consider that a very strong credit. And the City of Mayor actually in 2016 had 85% of fund balance relative to operating expenditures. And so that actually allows the city to get a 1-notch bump. So what would have been a AA- credit, which is still a very strong credit, especially for a town of about 2,000 people, that's an incredibly strong credit. You've achieved that 1-notch bump to AA just as a result of having such strong budgetary flexibility, by having such a large amount of fund balance relative to your operating expenditures. And so that's something to keep in mind as you, if you are balancing priorities and you're wondering, should we spend down some fund balance? It is possible that if you were to spend down below 75%, if S&P were to do a surveillance rating, there could be the potential for a notch downgrade down to that AA- if you were to dip below that 75% amount. But for the time being, that really is helping the city out tremendously. And then the one drag on the rating, which is only 10% of the total rating, so it is a small percent, is the debt and contingent liability profile. So I should mention that S&P uses a 5-point Likert scale: very weak, weak, adequate, strong, very strong. So there's not a lot that can be done in terms of negotiating with them about, could you use a different word and not say it's weak, or could you, that's basically them saying on a scale of 1 to 5, they're putting that at a 2, the debt and contingent liability profile. Not a lot the city can do about the contingent liability portion of that. You guys participate in PARA, as any city in the state of Minnesota does, and so as goes the PARA, so goes the city. So I won't spend too much time on that Public Employee Retirement Association plan component of this. Just to touch on the debt component, which the city does have some control over. What's impacting the rating here is that governmental fund debt service 23% of total governmental fund expenditures, and to have that net direct debt of 242% of total governmental fund revenue. That is high, but that being said, I've seen much higher. So I by no means is that concerning. And the nice thing here is that this is not long-term debt. I mean, this is all, as they point out here, it's paid within the next 10 years. So this is something that, as I see it, your economy is doing this, and your debt is doing this. So these are two good trends. These are two things that are doing, exactly what you want them to do over time. And that would imply that, as they discuss in the outlook here, the upside scenario and the downside scenario, if these things just continue to play out as they're playing out currently, then it's possible and maybe even likely the city could see even another bump up to AA+ in the next few years. And that's something that, for a town of your size, just to be in this position, you guys are in great shape, and that leads to 6 very competitive bids, one being actually 13 basis points below our pre-sale estimate, which is just a very good result. So with that, I'll happily yield for any questions that you guys may have.
Any questions? one, I appreciate you going through this and
Mhm.
explaining. I think this is certainly helpful, you know, from the other
Yeah,
40 pages we had to get through, so this is certainly helpful, I appreciate that. Any specific questions for Chris? Yeah, I think we've met, I mean, now we're getting to that point where we can get this finalized, so I don't have any questions myself. So I do appreciate you coming out.
Happy to be here.
Going through this with it, you know, I thank Todd and the entire team for getting us, it's obviously quite the savings, you know, getting us here, and that 7%, is a nice number.
Right.
So I do appreciate it. So if there's no other questions, then I will, sorry, my computer went to sleep. I'll look for a motion to approve resolution 10-23-17-38, approving the issuance of sale of the $2,960,000 sewer and water refunding bond series 2017A, and pledging for the security thereof of that revenues. Make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Boder, a second from Councilmember Butterfield. Any further discussion?
So I have an old copy of this. Did the resolution get changed?
It'll get changed. So that was the one that was provided to us, and then the bids were received today, and that's kind of the outcome that was received today. And so, since the packet went out ahead of time, that's why it still reflects the old and, but it'll be updated based on this information to reflect the $2,785,000.
And to take out the verbiage that was in there about the previous.
Yeah, she resent those. She resent that later today.
I didn't see it, but that's all right. Cool.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So thank you.
Great. Thank you guys very much.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
And then Maggie, did you get him what he needs, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, that will take us to city engineer C1, comprehensive plan, quote for comprehensive plan. So Dave, I don't know if that's something you wanna, open up, or if Maggie, you wanna?
I can, I guess, give a lead in anyways. So in 2018, your comprehensive plan update is due. And so, you have your consultant planner working with the planning commission, through some of those elements right now. As we get farther along, there's gonna be some, updates there and be required from an engineering standpoint related to your water plan, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and transportation. And so, we've been asked to put together a proposal, for you to estimate what those fees associated with that work would be to help, the city through that process. And once kind of the planning work is to a point, where we can start taking the land use and the growth area and, planning the infrastructure to serve those areas. So that is the proposal you have in your packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
And this is, I believe that Dave had sent, the interim city administrator, Rick, this estimate, so it is in the budget. So this, I mean, this is presented as for you to discuss, but I wanted to make sure it was in the budget, and then just in case, like, because of the preliminary budget process, we need it to pass right away, just so we have those, if this is accepted, that the funds would be there, for next year.
Okay. Any questions on, maybe we'll start with the, this first one, there's two separate ones.
Right, and I guess I can just give you an overview of the other one and discuss them together. If you'll recall, I think it was a couple years ago now, Kyle, that we had a scope of services to take a look at your wastewater facilities, particularly the wastewater plant, put together a capital improvement plan, but looked out well into the future as to, you know, you have a lot of equipment and things to operate that plant, that need ongoing maintenance and eventually replacement. So we looked at your wastewater plant to give you a big picture view of what you could plan on and what you should be considering as you look at your enterprise fund to take care of that facility. This is the corresponding work to take a look at your water plant, and basically working with Kyle, and then ultimately trying to give you that capital improvement plan so that you can plan out again well into the future and be able to anticipate kind of those ongoing maintenance and replacements that you're going to have with your water plant, so that you can properly plan for it.
Okay, thank you. And this comprehensive plan, well, this is, you've gone through all the requirements for the comprehensive plan that are needing, and this is, you've gone through that checklist and everything's covered in here?
Correct, yep. So this is our best estimate of kind of what those, if you take a look at the individual components, we tried to estimate each of them. Transportation's the biggest piece of this. The assumption here is that your existing comprehensive plan more or less just needs some updating, that there's not significant changes from what we planned for the last time we went through this. Nevertheless, it still all needs to be updated and verified.
Right, okay. So we looking, Maggie, for motions to approve these or just discuss these?
I would say, yeah, discuss, and then we can kind of plan budget-wise if these are things, like the comprehensive plan, if this is something that should stay in the budget. I mean, it is a state mandate. We do have to do the comprehensive plan. And so, and then with the CIP, that would be an enterprise fund budget. And so when we get to that workshop where we do the actual budget for that, then we can budget for that item as well.
So this is kind of information for us right now.
Mhm.
Okay. Comprehensive plan quote, I don't see us getting around doing it. I mean, we're gonna have to budget for that and get this done.
Right, and that's kind of, a lot of cities have to do it. And we did get some aid in, I think it was 10,000 grant aid for that plan. A lot of cities in the metro, since it's mandated, can apply for that funding, and we did get some for that. But it is something that the city does have to budget for to get completed, because it does ultimately have to go to the Met Council to get approval, plus the surrounding townships as well.
We got a grant for the original one, or
For
for the 2018?
Well, it's all, I think it's kind of like a rolling process. It started in 2017, but it won't be finished until 2018.
Oh, okay.
So I think that 10,000 was received in 2017.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
All right, any questions on the comprehensive plan quote? No. And that was sent to Rick, so we should have that properly budgeted for.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, how about the capital improvement study? Any questions on that? Any comments on that? To me, it seems like a useful tool.
I know the wastewater treatment plant. I know Greg has, that study has been really helpful. Obviously, there's things that come up that we don't plan for, but the nice thing is that he's able to kind of go through that document, and it is kind of a ever-changing document. Things will come up, things can get shifted, but at least we have an idea. And I know that every year he puts together kind of what he wants to spend that year and what he has to spend based on the budget he has. So I think that's the useful thing, that if we do have one for the water treatment plant too, then we'll be kind of set for those two items, or those two facilities. I'm kind of working with Public Works as well, and I'm going to start working with the fire department to get theirs done, so that when we do a budget workshop, hopefully in November, we can have all these kind of documents that link to the budget, that we can say, well, if you come, obviously there's unplanned things that happen, but the things we are planning for, we can say, well, where's this budget for, and this is where the money's coming from. So
maybe it's appropriate to bring this back as we do our budget discussions or our budget workshop, and then we'll discuss some of this.
Dave, were you looking for like
You know,
approval of it, or-
whenever you're ready to move forward or you choose not to, it's up to you. You know, the comp plan stuff, we just wanna make sure that we stay enough on, or top of that we don't get behind and are crunched, at the end. A lot of that work, again, depends on, kind of the planning process and where we fit into that. I know from a transportation standpoint, we're ready to go anytime on that. The water CIP, again, the idea behind it is the improvements associated with that, or things that come up with your water plant and your wastewater plant, they're big ticket items. So the idea is that you don't necessarily just go and find money for some of that stuff if it comes up. You also have your enterprise funds that take care of those needs. So the idea is it's a useful tool when you're looking at those reserves you have to understand whether or not, you know, sometimes those balances look like they're pretty significant, and they are, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have the funds that you need to fund the plant and the upgrades long term. So again, they're both, the comp plan is kind of like it was say, that's a mandate. You have to update your comp plan. The CIP is a useful tool, and I know that the wastewater one has been used quite a bit in that planning and budgeting going forward, and has been helpful to staff, and so we were asked to do the same thing for the water. If you recall, originally we had given you a proposal for the water and the sewer at the same time. At that time, it was the idea was to move forward with just the sewer, bring the water back at a future time, and so staff would like you to consider that again to help them out with their planning efforts.
Feel it's been a useful tool. Absolutely, Mayor. Okay. Yep. Very much so. Perfect. All right. Well, let's bring that back then at the budgeting workshop. Seems like the appropriate place that we need to budget for some of that. So.
Okay.
How many work hours do you expect?
I'd have to kind of go back and figure, but if you assume that we're over $100 an hour, kind of on average, you can kind of back that in.
So the majority is people time?
It's people time. That's all it is. Yeah.
Any other questions on those? Thanks, Dan. All right, any other business?
I was just wanted to ask, did everybody get their emails figured out?
I have not yet.
No.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, just contact me or, Lucas.
He called my house and I finally listened to my messages, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get those.
Yeah, 'cause
I know I need to talk to them also.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I think once we can get all those updated, then we can then stop the contract with Frontier.
Do they need to, didn't he just give instructions on how to change it over yourself? That's what I did.
He did do that. I did send an email out saying how you could do it yourself
So that worked for me.
if you don't wanna call him back.
And then I was able to also get it on my phone.
Yeah,
based on his-
Yep, I do have those instructions as well, if you
Yeah.
need
Oh,
those.
that's good, so it's easy.
Well, I guess it is. You know what you're doing. But, yeah, I had a hard time at first. But yeah, his instructions were, so you really don't need him to log into your account. I had a hard time because I can't remember my password. And even what I think it is, I guess that's not it. For Frontier. It's a mess. But otherwise, no, I got it all. He has very good instructions and it works.
Perfect.
And I just had a question, is Jaguar still thinking about coming into the residential areas? Have we heard
They're in
anything
some.
from them?
I heard they're in some places,
I heard they're in downtown, but not out in the
in
neighborhood.
the new additions.
I think we're like the main trunk lines, their main trunk lines are. I think a couple people on Mary and looking at it.
Okay,
So I don't think it's like every year,
okay,
but I know they're working on it.
okay, just curious.
And future budget meetings, do people prefer to have them after a council meeting or a whole separate night just for a budget meeting and keep it strictly that, so they don't get too, what's preference for November?
Strictly budget.
I could do it after.
An additional, you after work?
matter, Wednesdays are just bad for me now,
Okay.
because it's church night.
But it could be the off Monday.
No.
Cannot be the off Monday, council.
I can throw out some dates maybe, and
Okay.
see if there's a
Let's
consensus.
do that, see if we can get a consensus. Why don't you do that then?
Okay.
All right, any other items? I'll look for motion to adjourn.
Second.
No, motion second to adjourn, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed. We are adjourned.
My battery died.
Oh no.
Perfect timing.
I think it's going out the whole meeting.
All right, let's move, we'll jump right into the work session. We'll call the work session to order. And we can start right with the Highway 25 project. The Highway 25 project, Bolton Mink. Dave, do you have some updates on?
We have a guest here tonight that hopefully is going to help us be able to answer some of the questions as we talk about the future Highway 25 a little bit better than I was last time. I was able to pass some information on to Diane, and based on our discussion last time, I'd give that to Maggie.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the comments, the questions, discussions we have, so Diane can go through kind of an overview of the project, touch on some of those things we discussed last time, and then hopefully some time just for some more questions and a little bit of just back and forth discussion about what the plan for the highway is coming up in 2020, and the city's thoughts and some input as to how that project should get developed.
And Dan, are you with Minnesota Department of Transportation?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Diane Langenbach, and I am the South Area Engineer with MnDOT for Carver and Scott counties. We have an upcoming project. Just wait a minute here while she gets the files loaded. We're kind of excited about this. We have a project in 2020, as Dave mentioned. It started out as basically a paving project because our materials group said, hey, we got to get out there and do a mill and overlay, which is basically resurfacing. Once we started looking into the project in more detail, we noticed a lot of other needs as part of the project, specifically related to ADA, and I'll show you some examples of that. So you might say our scope has been, we've had a little scope creep, and our project's getting a little bit larger, but we definitely, want to work with the city, and so I just want to give you a little bit more information. Can you see? There should be a,
That's where I would look.
should be on the flash drive, and then there should be a sub-file with mayor. I don't see the directory yet. Do you have the flash drive up?
No.
Go to this PC. And devices and drive should be in there.
Yeah, it should be right in there.
There it is. Just in case.
Oh, I just got it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. You can just double click on that. Here, maybe you wanna just pass these down in case anyone wants to take some notes or anything.
And then you just want the power, yep, that one right there.
Maybe one more. Share. Oh, just remove this?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Well, that's fine.
There we go.
Like I mentioned, I'm Diane Langenbach, and we have a project coming up in 2020. That project starts at the southern end of Mare at the west junction of 30, or First Street. It goes through Mare and all the way up to Watertown, kind of on the north end where 25 makes that left-hand turn to head west. So that's the project limits. I think it's about, well, you guys probably know, 4.5, 5 miles, something like that. Next one. So the project basically includes the resurfacing of the pavement, in that stretch that I just showed you. We are gonna add a right turn lane at 32nd Street, that's farther up towards Watertown. We are constructing, ADA, or American Disability Act improvements, to meet current standards, replacing some outdated guardrail, with the safer design. And then we really wanna, make potential, complete streets improvements, based on community needs and values, and I'll explain what that is a little bit more as we go through this. So the question is, why ADA improvements? You may have noticed a bunch of us out here last fall in our vests, and really walking all the sidewalks and taking kind of an inventory of all of them. Since your project was done in 2007, a lot of changes have happened with the ADA requirements. And while MnDOT used to come through with a paving project and basically just kind of fix what we could do cost effectively, that's how it kind of used to get included. Well, now we have a transition plan to bring all of our facilities up to meet the requirements, and apparently it's then also to reduce our liability for lawsuits, and that apparently that's been an issue. So I'm going to show you some examples, and I will say right off the bat, this is something that MnDOT will be paying for, so you don't need to worry about the city needing to pay for infrastructure that you just put in, and, well, it's been 10 years now, but still, it's pretty recent.
So you're paying for the ADA?
Yes. Yep, and I'll show you some examples of the kinds of things that we'll need to be doing as part of that. Could you go back one slide? So yeah, we have a transition plan, as I mentioned, to bring everything up to standards, even if right-of-way is needed. And again, that's something we didn't used to do. We didn't used to buy right-of-way in order to make these ADA improvements, but we are doing that now. You can see it's a very important effort that department has. So when we look at sidewalks, to meet ADA requirements, well-designed ones should be wide and clear of obstructions. They call it a pedestrian access route. MnDOT uses 5 feet as a minimum, but we like to have a 6-foot wide sidewalk in order for maintenance equipment to get through. They should be smooth and free of tripping hazards. They should have a cross slope less than 2%, and should have curb ramps that meet requirements. So here's an example, and this is from the field walk that we took. These photos will be mostly from that field walk. Here's an example of where your nice lights on the sidewalk are put in a position that it doesn't leave us that pedestrian access route. So where we can, we will likely add some pavement. If you can just imagine a wider sidewalk going in, or go around. We'll try and make something look decent, but we'll just need to make sure we have that pavement.
How wide's the sidewalk right now without just the
So
sidewalk?
this is probably 5 feet in this area, and what I was gonna point out is the right-of-way is basically right here.
Right.
And so when we came through in 2007, we kept everything in the right-of-way, and all we got from the property owners was the right of entry, basically their permission, recognizing that we were working right up against the right-of-way. They gave us permission to cross the line to get our construction done, but we didn't buy any property. We just had those agreements that they understood that build it, we needed to enter onto their property. The light poles, if you look, we have about this 1 foot that we have maintained behind the curb and gutter the whole way. The idea at the time was probably could have been a little bit closer, but we were trying to provide enough separation between that base and the curb and gutter that they didn't crack each other, or that the light pole and that movement didn't have an effect on the curb and gutter. And then the only thing, the last thing I'll point out about this is, if you'll remember, before the project, this area probably didn't have any sidewalk. If it did, it just had a butt end. There was no curb and gutter, and the light poles were wood poles that were actually out in the pavement. There was was nothing separating them from the driving surface, they were just out in the pavement, so just, again, just trying to give you some idea of kind of what it was like before we did the last project.
So that stick laying down is your measure stick till?
Yep, that would, I believe, is the minimum 5 feet.
That's a 5 foot?
Yeah, and I know they like to go 6, but it kinda somewhat depends on the city too, because, you guys maintain them.
6 foot sidewalks then?
It must be, that's 5 feet there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we talked about moving those poles, and that's not doable.
Those bases are pretty deep.
Well, that's what we have in our notes to do, is to move those. I think there's just like maybe 3, where we feel like they need to be moved. Some places we can add some pavement if we have the right of way to do that. We can add some sidewalk.
And you'll get into it here more too, but I think there's also the opportunity to consider narrowing the pavement some too.
Yep, exactly.
That's, what needs to happen.
Yep, exactly. So that just gives you, one example of where we need to clear obstructions. Sometimes you'll see, bushes and trees overgrowing and covering that up, and again, we need to keep those trimmed back so we have that, clear, sidewalk width. You can go to the next one. So, well-designed sidewalks should be smooth and free of tripping hazards. And, again, these pictures are from our field walk. In the left photo, you can see where the sidewalk has sunk down a couple inches, and that leaves a very, strong, tripping hazard, on that curb there. So, again, we would wanna raise that up and not have that anymore. Same with the picture on the right. Anytime there's more than a half inch, like crack, we need to fix that, or if there's a vertical half inch or more, it's considered a tripping hazard, and we need to then, fix that. So
And that again is something MnDOT will be fixing?
Yes, yep, that would be part of our ADA
What
work.
do they do going forward? I mean, things heave a year from then, I mean, is there you come back and inspect them periodically? Do we, or what happens?
That's a very good question. Right now, we're so busy just trying to, get the field walks done. We're basically taking it when we have a project in the area, then they come out and do a field walk. But I don't know of any going back and checking them. I think we're kind of relying on you as the local city to.
And are we, as the municipalities, responsible then?
Yes, I
for
believe.
ongoing?
Yep, there should be a limited use permit that we issue if the facility is in our right of way, and then in that it just says that the city then is responsible for the ongoing maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
So here's the, what we mean by the sidewalk cross slope of less than 2%. So you're talking about sort of the width and what angle you might be at. 2% is the max. As we looked through the whole downtown area, the cross slopes range from, there may have been some at 2.5, but most of them were 3 to 5, and then there were some that were up into that 7 or 8%. So again, we need to correct those, and we'll be doing that as part of the project as well.
So who installed that there? Is that one, that's something that was done with the?
So, yep, that was in the last project, and again, the right of way was right here.
Yep.
And I think that's probably the gas station there, that's the driveway there. So, to flatten that out, you have
You
to
gotta
extend it beyond
extend
the right
beyond.
of way to
Right.
transition it, and then there's some other.
So that's why they did.
Right, it was the best we could do to
stay within the,
property that we
yeah.
had to work with.
Yep.
Is this a policy problem that we need to address within the city to make sure that we're being ADA compliant with
Going
plans
forward,
like that?
yeah, it's something we need to consider. Like Diane said, back when this project was done, you did the best you could, given what you
Right.
had to work with.
And that's what we did, too.
And that was acceptable at that
Yep,
point?
at that point, that's what we were doing too, so it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing, so many things that aren't meeting the requirements, but there's just been so much more, emphasis on it that, we're really taking a closer look. Yeah, I think you're right.
And that's when the ball kind
But,
of
yep, got
started
rolling.
to change the approach on these kind of things, even with the reconstruction project.
Right, exactly. So you can go to the next one. And then the last one on the well-designed sidewalks is that they should have curb ramps that meet requirements. So, you can see there's a certain, minimum width of 3 feet for the curb ramp. We prefer 4. You've got the detectable warnings, those are the bump, truncated domes. We call them, the slope going into that shouldn't be more than 8.3%. And then again, there's that 2% max slope in any direction. So again, all this, it's very technical. I mean, they had to take a very close look at every single part of the sidewalk and intersections and to really see where we need to make improvements. And I can tell you, by the time they got from 2nd to 4th, there were so many changes that basically we're going to reconstruct those blocks along 25, just because it becomes more cost effective if you have to take out so much and replace. So we'll be doing that as part of the project. So here's just a couple examples. The one on the left, a lot of times we don't like to see those, the ramp and the truncated domes at an angle, because it kind of sends someone straight into the intersection instead of them being perpendicular to like where you'd see the crosswalks. So I don't know exactly what's in store for that. But I know that there's also a catch basin if you look down in the gutter, and again, that's kind of in a bad spot too, so we would be moving that as part of the project as well. And this one here, you can just see there's not a lot of space, and I don't have the whole curb ramp in here, but it's very close, and there's just some weird, grades that would really give someone in a wheelchair a lot of difficulty.
If you remember, that's actually where the 2 sidewalks were stacked on top of each other before the last project, so yeah, it's a tricky corner.
Right. So we'll do what we need to do, and, you'll obviously be seeing the plans and everything too as we work through this. So I mentioned yeah, you can keep going. The complete streets is another policy that's being implemented all around, but MnDOT has really embraced it. And really what it's trying to do is enhancing the transportation system, not only for vehicles, but to really keep in mind the health of the people, economy, and environment. So you really are looking at all modes of transportation. We want to make sure we're setting things up nice for the bike and peds, for the freight, for transit. And a lot of times you're trying to balance different needs, and so we are just committed to working through that. And a lot of times the most important part of this complete streets is getting input from the community on what you value and what you see as being improvements or enhancements. So just to give you an example, so here's the design approach using complete streets is that we consider all the different modes, consider the community values and needs. We would use what's called context-sensitive design, and that just means that you're really taking into account the community that you're doing the project in. You don't want to just force a road right straight through town when it's your main street and you've got, downtown on both sides. You want it pedestrian-friendly and this and that. So it's really to take that into consideration. Also looking at the topography, what kind of demand there might be for peds and bicyclists. Traffic speed, we find, is an option or is a concern in a lot of these projects when you're going through a downtown. You need to look at freight volumes and then just the road function. So here's some examples of things that may be part of a complete streets design. Adding sidewalks and trails where you're missing connections. Curb extensions, those are the bump outs on the intersection corners, and I'll show you photos of those. Parking lanes, which you have right now, pedestrian refuge medians, bike lanes, signal timing, any of those kinds of things that would help just really tailor the project to the environment. So one of the things that has come up as we've looked at this project is that you don't have, your sidewalk pretty much ends at 5th Street, and there's not a sidewalk that goes up to the roundabout at 7. So when our bike and peds person looks at that, they're like, yeah, that would be an important connection. So we do have some funding set aside to help with some of these trail connections as well. So that is one that we'd be looking at, and we would be then working with the city to see, you know, what other ideas you might have as far as completing those connections. And here's an example of bump outs. I did a project in the city of Jordan in 2012, and it's a little different because they had a big traffic speed issue. Going through downtown Jordan on 21, you're basically trying to just get through town so you can enter 169 if you're familiar with that area. So they had 10,000 vehicles coming in per day, and the speeds were quite high. So in order to try and help with that, we did a number of things. The bump outs on the left is where we took those corners and we bumped them out. You can see then it uses up some of that pavement, and it makes your pedestrian crossing shorter, which is a good thing for pedestrians. It also places them out even when they're standing on the bump out. The cars coming can see them better because they're, you know, out there instead of back, hidden behind the parked cars. So we put those in at I think there were 2 or 3 different intersections in Jordan. It kind of gives kind of a small town feel, I think, kind of too, I think, with those. Parking was a big issue, which it usually is, and I think we only ended up losing like 1 parking spot by doing those bump outs. So it didn't end up too bad. And then the other thing that we did is, to slow people down, you can't just put up a sign. People aren't going to follow it. You really need to give them cues that, hey, I better slow down, and make them uncomfortable driving fast. So we ended up using 5 feet of the pavement. This was a very wide pavement section. So we left the parking, and then we put in a 5-foot bike lane to use up some of that pavement, and then we narrowed up the lanes some, both the through lanes, and I think the center left turn lane got narrowed up some too. But again, that was just an attempt to slow people down as they're coming through, making them feel a little bit more constrained. So those are just some examples, and I just they just did a case study, our Complete Streets group did, and so I just put some of the findings and lessons learned, but I think I just explained most of them to you, so.
And I understand the bump out at a crosswalk. I think that's a value. I think that's still some needs there. But outside of crosswalks, is there any other advantage to a bump out, or is it more aesthetics at that point?
Well, no, some of it, like David was explaining, you know, if we're short on room and we need to be chasing back a grade, it gives us more room to make that happen. So there's some design reasons that they help too.
Okay.
So, like I mentioned, an important part of the whole process is public involvement and working with the community to get ideas and move forward. Right now, we're still 2 or 3 years out, so we have some time. But these things take time, I'll tell you that. So there's a number of different ways of getting community input. We can do a survey where you're just doing things online, showing photos and getting input. We can do a open house where it's just you show some boards and get people to come. We can do a public meeting with presentation. There's focus groups, and you probably have some other ideas of how we could meet with people and get that input. So we can certainly talk further about that, but it's an important part of the process because we don't know your community like you do, and it's important for us to kind of understand your needs and your values. You can go to the next. So just to give you an idea of schedule, we're starting design activities in January. The first thing we'll want to do is a layout showing all the different improvements, and that's when we would then set our construction limits. I can't even tell you at this point how much right-of-way we're going to need because we just haven't done enough design yet to know. I know we will need some, so we'll be working through that. Municipal consent, if we end up needing right-of-way, which it looks like we will, that would be then a trigger for municipal consent, where we would be asking, for a resolution from the city, just saying that you agree with the project and moving it forward. So that would happen in the spring of 18, and then we would get into final design activities once we all agree on what the project, is. And then we'd get into the, plan production of final design. Advertise and award to the contractor in late 19 or early 20, and then you'll see project construction pretty much throughout the construction season of 2020.
So municipal consent to go into city-owned property, or?
It's just an overall, we would send you a layout showing the work that we're planning on doing, and it's basically the city just saying, yeah, we agree with what you're doing, and you can proceed ahead. So it's kind of just a checkpoint. Yep. If there's any outstanding issues, that's kind of the time to kind of work through those, if we haven't done, hopefully we've done that already. But it's just part of our formal process.
Like that light pole, if a homeowner says, no, I don't want you coming into my property, we're not looking at any domain issues, are we?
I think we'd try and work around it and maybe, widen into the street. You have a lot of pavement out there. I think your parking lane is at least 12. It might even be wider than that.
48 feet, so you've got 2 12-foot parking lanes and 2 12-foot
Through
driving
lanes,
lanes.
right.
So I do think, there's an opportunity
To kind of narrow that down, yep.
Which, kind of what you were touching on too, then potentially provide some traffic calming benefits too, that just kind
Right.
of make people feel a little more squeezed driving through town, and that tends to slow traffic a little bit.
So we'll have an idea if there's any eminent domain issues.
Oh,
before
certainly.
doing that.
Oh, yeah, you'd be seeing all the, when we have the construction limits from our layout, you'd be seeing what right-of-way we need, and we'd combine that in a summary, and we certainly, if someone is very opposed to it, we would certainly try and find another way of.
How long have these projects been on your radar?
I scoped this one in 2015. Usually we're about 5 years out when we do our scoping, so.
Where's the money coming from?
This one, I believe, has some federal funding. It's mostly, out of our pavement preservation. Like I mentioned, this basically started as just a mill and overlay or resurfacing project, which would have been really easy. I mean, those are like, okay, it's a no-brainer, just come through and put pavement in. But then when we did the ADA field walk, that's when we really recognized, how much other work that we need to do, and that's where we really want to work with the city to try and do that.
That's how the last project started too. It was originally mill and overlay through town, and the city there's several different funding sources with that. I think the city had got
Co-op, I think.
funding to associate with kind of streetscaping. They got some
Okay.
fund they have to do for that. They had a cooperative agreement.
Yep,
then
I saw you had the maximum for that. Yep.
To, basically then help the city update the urban aspects of the project, so. But originally, and I think that was it was a mill and overlay to the south edge of town, and then from the end of the reconstruction going north was all mill and overlay.
Okay.
2007.
7 is when the plans were signed.
Yep.
Yep.
What's MnDOT got, we're expecting over the next 10, 15 years for other infrastructure improvement in Carver County?
We're doing a 2020 project on 212 through Norwood Young America. And now that looks like it's being extended all the way over to Cologne, so that's a pretty big pavement project, with signals and maybe an underpass, and, so that'll be a pretty major project. It'll be mostly MnDOT funding, but if they do the underpass, they got a federal grant, Safe Routes to School, to do that, and there would be a local match, so the city would have some money in that one.
I just wanted to get the county in here. Maybe a year ago, year and a half ago, how about, MnDOT has zero money allocated for the out metro for the next 20 years.
Oh, you're kidding. No, that is not true.
That was actually this past spring.
This spring, that's why they raised the wheelage to
And that's
and
why
the
they're
tax
actually
tax.
raising
Yeah,
taxes within the county, and they came to get support from all of the cities in Carver County to support that, because apparently MnDOT is.
Well, I will say though, in their defense, we're not doing anything expansion-wise, there's some key locations where it needs an interchange or whatnot. We have no money to do any of that. We're basically just trying to take care of what we have out there. So they may have been saying that more in the terms of, like expanding something to 4 lanes if it needed it, or an interchange, any kind of major project. We really we don't have any of that programmed, so.
Okay, I'm just surprised that you're here talking about spending this money, but, it sounds like there's.
Yeah, no,
I mean. Minnesota, we're kind of being left out in the cold, I mean,
I'm gonna have to talk to those county folks, because we care about this. We care about the small
My
towns.
county was the same thing, I mean, every
oh,
county.
it's outstate metro.
I got all my new sales tax rates, and everybody abandoned Hennepin County, and they're all going to the new half-cent transportation sales tax.
Sure.
For all counties.
Yeah, and that is, part of it is it's the preservation versus the expansion.
Right.
From what I know of it is that's one of the concerns, is that there isn't
Yeah.
state expansion money coming into Carver County for some of the active lanes, some of the things that are at least on the radar, some of the bigger picture.
So when do we do, I'd love to get community involvement on what people say. I know that they're gonna talk about an intersection that's not in this plan.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
But, right, but, when would that have to be, would we organize that, or?
Well, no, we can help with that. I mean, certainly we would want some input from you on what's the best way to talk to people. Is it having a meeting? Is it doing a survey or whatever?
Well, I know it seems like social media, but I think
Right.
that we can really encourage people to come.
Right.
And do something and try to get more community involvement, because I think there's passion out there for speeds. I think it's speeds, pedestrians, and bikes that I think are our biggest concern downtown.
Right.
And I see big semis going 40 miles an hour through town, and, my kids are crossing those roads, and I won't let them cross 25 without an adult.
Right.
Because it's not safe.
I don't blame you at all. So yeah, and if there's some meetings going on right now, I mean, I think it's always good if we can kind of piggyback with that, because nobody really wants another separate meeting to go to. So I don't know if you've got some ongoing meetings with some of these groups, or, well, we can talk further, but we should probably start that, here over the next 3 or 4 months. I think we'd probably want to get going in January, maybe after the holidays.
Yeah, but I think it'd be good. We have a lot of, we have the newsletter, we have a lot of ways to get.
I think a really nice thing is, you can do a Survey Monkey.
Yep,
And
that's.
you can, advertise it in the newsletter or on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so, that's one way to do it.
Mhm.
I also think the work sessions are really good too.
Right.
Do, a physical location.
Sure.
But yeah, Survey Monkey,
Yeah, we just did a.
More results on surveys.
But those were paper
Those are
surveys.
Papers.
We've never done a Survey Monkey. We've always done paper surveys and.
We just did one for, in fact, I think it's still ongoing for Norwood Young America. We used a new tool that we were kind of testing called MetroQuest, and the results haven't been all that great, not from the survey, but just the overall tool. So now I think we are thinking about going back to SurveyMonkey, and just found out you can include graphics with that, so that we can include some of these pictures that would really help people understand what we're asking for. So I think that would probably be a good way to get things rolling, and then we can do some in-person stuff too.
And now is a pretty good time to think about that, even if we had to do something at the expense, is to see on this scale, if we're fixing intersections here, maybe we can fix that intersection somehow.
Oh, that's right, add on to that process.
I'm curious now, what intersection are you thinking
The
you
one
would?
by the new gas station, we have a new gas station
Oh,
now.
just south. We do have, actually, another paving project to the south. I think they're scoping it this year, so that one would be out to 2022. But that is on the radar as well for
That one's really
paving.
busy, there's a lot of, we have a trail
Yep.
into that neighborhood, and a lot of people cross right there.
Yeah, I saw that as I was coming in, that you've got all these residents,
It's very dangerous.
and then you've
We
got
almost
the
got hit on it.
Casey's.
And was that the one you sent the light
I,
thing for?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That was
it's
what
that
our,
one.
yep, that's what our traffic engineer kinda took a look at it. And I noticed as I was coming in, it looks like you do already have an advanced pedestrian crossing sign. But that's what he was recommending. If you wanted to try something real cost-effective, would be something like that LED sign that I sent you a photo of.
I think we already got approval, but it had to be constantly flashing. That's what
Oh.
MnDOT come back.
Okay, I guess I didn't know about that, but is that a problem to have it
No, we just
constantly
didn't know, I
flashing?
mean, we went back and forth on, does it give us false sense of security?
Okay,
And then we've got an issue with the speed limit where we need the speed limit changed, 'cause it's 40 right there. And we got
Okay.
approval to get it to 30, but the signs haven't been changed.
I can check on that, 'cause actually I did pull up, our speed, and I did notice that it looked like they were moving the 30 to
Yeah, but
the
I
south,
don't
but
think
it hasn't been,
Can you work with Maggie on
Fine.
you guys connect?
Sure.
And if anything you can help
yep,
with, that's been quite a while. We've
Yeah.
been
okay.
trying to get that.
Yeah, no, I can definitely.
Yeah, I think that's the one that we were.
Yeah, when you were, okay, I wasn't sure if there were two separate issues, so it does sound like there's two separate issues. There's the signing, making it more visible, and then the speed issue. Again, though, it's really hard, just a sign, to get people to slow down with just a sign. It's tricky, but,
But it can be enforced.
yes,
Yeah.
that's where we need help, is with the enforcement.
And we have Carver County on board once we get that, we've talked to them.
Yeah, and I think I did get a message from Paul Sheeta saying that he thought that it did need to be lowered, or like that he felt like we need to get that sign.
So they must have already done the speed study that they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so that's all been done?
Yeah.
Okay, I was still
We're
trying to
waiting
catch
for-
up on what's been done.
We're just waiting for some maintenance guys to come out
Okay.
and change out the sign.
All right, I can definitely check on that and keep you posted on what's happening with that.
How do those, bump outs affect, like, the big plows that come through? It's horrible.
Well, we just need to make sure, and in fact, that's interesting, 'cause when we were on Google Maps, you could kinda see, some truck tire marks, and it looked like they were already on a side street, kinda turning from more of the center of the lane instead of their right turn lane, and then making the turn onto 25, they were kinda going over the center again to try and make that turn. So we would definitely wanna run the turning templates and make sure whether it's a heavy, semi or whether it was the plows, we would need to make sure, they can make those turns. And then if you can't really see in that photo, but they're pretty flat, so they're more conducive to, the curb isn't one of those, like 4 or 6 inch, they're kinda flat to make that a little bit easier. Any other questions? I do appreciate you, having me out here tonight, and like I said, we'll be talking more, not only about that speed issue, but just overall getting community input and how we best do that, so.
Try and get that survey put together.
Sure, yeah, and we'll put that together, and then we just bring it to you to get input, and then you can help us understand the best way, whether there's a newsletter or, the best way of getting that word out. So, perfect.
Well, thank you very
Yes.
much for coming up, and certainly, I think calms me quite a bit from initially when we discussed it, so,
Right.
I do appreciate answering a lot of questions.
Sure. Happy to do it.
We'll continue working as a group and obviously partnering with you and.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we all win if we come up with a really good project, so that's what we're trying to do, so. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, speed signs for Howard 20.
Oh, I think we covered it. That was that
Yep.
one
Yep.
that needs to be moved.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can follow up with that.
Perfect. Do you know, do you have a,
Oh,
business
yeah,
card?
oh my gosh, sorry.
Oh, sure.
Could I have one, please?
Yes.
this to you, I know at the last workshop, we talked about creating more of a policy for the community center. I just wanted to bring this back, because I know there's the families are kind of the school, or homeschool, they're wanting to kind of get going on it, on using the facility. And so, I did some research on some other communities and their, policies, and this is just a template. Changes can be made. I know I did send it out to the homeschool families, and they did review it and kind of give me some feedback. I think the important thing is that we just need to be really consistent. If you look on the back, that's who we offer current free rentals to, which is fine, but I think we need to be consistent, in who we offer free to, and just when we create our definitions, like our rental categories for those groups, I just wanna make sure that, you know, those groups are fitting within these groups, and that because I think when these people come in to ask for the rental, it's like, it's easier for staff to be like, okay, yep, you fall under this category, clearly this is what it charges, instead of being like, well, I don't know where you fit, kind of. And so I just wanted to bring that, and I mean, like I said, it's a changing document. It's something that'll go to you guys to get approved eventually. But I wanted to bring it in front of you today, just to kind of see what your thoughts are, and
You have it up where you can page through it. I can't.
oh, yeah, yep, I'm
computer.
sorry. Yep, so the first page is just kind of some general information that I'm still gathering, like the square footage, number of tables and chairs that we have. This is the current, I didn't change the rates yet. I did add church funeral in there, and then I did add birthday rental for 4 hours. That can be changed as well. I just kind of threw that out there as another community had that in there for a price. Next page is just kind of how, like, the priority for the facility. Obviously, you know, city-sponsored events, in elections, we do use this building for elections. We kind of want to make sure that we have priority. Otherwise, it's a first-come, first-served basis. Application to use it would be at City Hall. We would have I think we have an application already. And then we kind of go into liability. So, you know, we don't assume any liability for damage it's kind of a legal thing to people that injure or get injured, or any property damage for other people when they're using our facility. And that, I think it's pretty common for some events that we get put on like a temporary insurance, with our name on it. And then we just have some rules. I just listed some rules for using the facility. I think we did have some rules already, like no tobacco use inside the facility. That they would have to follow our local ordinances and state ordinances. That they would have to, if they brought in equipment, it has to be approved by the city. Some people do like to bring in their own things, and like I said, this can be changed.
So are these current? Is this current, or is this what
This
you're
is something
proposing?
I've written up.
You're proposing, okay.
Yeah. And just kind of the use of the kitchen can be used as well. I have to figure this out. Oh, this is a public event. So like if it was a public event, I believe it's a state statute that a peace officer has to be at the public event. And then it's alcoholic beverages cannot be sold at any function. I believe like at weddings, those are more, it has to have a permit. And this is just kind of what I've gathered from other communities. I know we have a confetti rule. Confetti is not allowed at all. And then we just want to be careful with like tape like, and stuff. I mean, I don't know what our, like, if we're really concerned about that, but just cleaning up wise, like, with decorations and stuff. I know there's some buildings that the paint can get ripped off. I don't know, maybe this is too much, or too little, I can change it.
Can you go to where you have it in groups of?
Oh, yeah, so that's in the back. So I just kinda looked at what other cities do. It really differs between communities. A lot of communities do have, like, their city-sponsored events are obviously, are generally free, because it's a city building. I know some people do, like, if it's a district, like a school district, they'll allow those to be free. I don't know if that's just kind of, I put that in there for now. Oops. Local tax-supported public agencies or nonprofits. I know a lot of cities do offer them for free or reduced. Local religious, like funerals or, like a church gathering or worship. Some communities offer that at a reduced fee. I did put, like, funeral or thing, for 50, just to throw that out there. Otherwise, anyone outside of the community that's, like, for-profit or a private agency or other individuals, would be charged according to those fees in the beginning. So, like, we wanna obviously support our local youth and civic and nonprofits and religious groups, but anybody outside, it's kinda like they would pay the non-local rate. So, I'm just opening this up for discussion. This is just based on, I kind of took a lot of this, combined it into what other communities do, but I know we wanna make it into our community policy. So that was, and I know we do have, some ladies from the schools here to talk, to kind of, if you guys want add any more input. But like I said, I did include, the list that we currently do offer free rentals to. I just really just looking at other communities I work for, I just think we need to be consistent. I think it's easier for staff if we have a clear policy.
I certainly think this is the way to go. I
Yep.
like the direction of the approach of this. Specific to the group that was here and the homeschool co-op, and so, where would they fall in? Which group would they fall in here?
I think that's what we're trying to figure out, me and them. That's the thing, like, I'm looking at who we currently offer free rentals to. I'm looking at, like, they don't have a nonprofit status.
What school district are your kids getting their education through? What school district are the materials coming through?
Well, we purchase all of our own materials, but we are in the Watertown Mayor School District. So when we report homeschooling, we report to Watertown Mayor School District, but.
Yes, I don't know, like, if we want it, like I said, like, some cities do district, like, school district as well. And it's like, do we wanna do district events? I'm looking at, I don't know, like, we have 4-H, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Future Farmers of America. Those are more based on district like, those are, like, kind of a district in itself, like, I think Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts have like a region that they pull kids from. I don't know, I think we're trying to figure that out. Local, like, I guess I don't, and maybe it's my fault for not researching a little bit more, but does your school, do you get any tax funding? You don't get any tax funding.
But I think what we were looking at ourselves as is like a nonprofit educational group, so if you're looking at, Girl Scouts, what their goals are as a nonprofit, educational outside and, their goals about what they're teaching, their students, people who are participating in that, it would be the same, we're just gathering a group of homeschoolers who are.
So are we just trying to figure out what to give to this group? Is that what we're trying to do?
Well, they don't have a 501c, they're not a nonprofit, like
Yeah.
the Girl
But they
Scouts.
do report all the grades to the Watertown School District, and it's the school, it's an activity to get those grades.
I mean, one, I think getting this policy set and some clarity is a good thing to do. And
Well, I think
by
too, if
true
you,
nonprofits and what's a true nonprofit versus who wants to call themselves a nonprofit. I mean, we have to have that clarity, I think, but I think to your point, I think what we're trying to resolve and help them is there anything we can do for them at this point where it would fall into some of this? I mean, I look at,
Group A.
I look at gun training, I don't know if that's a nonprofit or.
It is, well,
They are, but
yeah,
we
they're
don't,
nonprofit.
so we can just add a category,
With this fall, we got early childhood development, we have, mayor rec program, there could be some schooling, educational. I don't have a problem doing that, however, we wanna make it so it's clear enough and fair to anyone who would look at this. I have no problem reducing it, I have no problem giving it free for time, I mean,
we
we're not,
just need to be careful that
we just
not
need that
every
clarity, right?
so-called group comes in and goes, well, this is our group.
yeah, and I
we're
think
gonna
that's
get
what
it
So
we're
I don't know the
trying
best
to
way to
figure
get,
out.
I don't know the best way to get there.
We can bring in our, kids' homeschool forms that we can brought to the school.
Or do you have like a curriculum for what you're gonna?
We have our own separate curriculum. But that's a good point, I mean, but that's registered with the school district, is
Right.
that we all are registered as homeschoolers, so that's proof that
So maybe
we're
we
not
add a
just anybody.
category for homeschoolers that are,
Yeah.
is it a license or a certification
No.
or registered,
Just
registered homeschoolers?
Registered, yeah.
Maybe we add a group,
Yep.
registered homeschoolers.
And the curriculum has to maybe be attached to the application, so it's proof that it's a school.
Because it's,
The registration.
you
Yeah.
have math curriculum, you have language, you have reading, you have, and it all comes from different, and I have a second grader, and I have a kindergartner, and I have a preschooler, and, yes. You
But
get more than you
each
need.
family has one registration, right?
Yep.
So if,
We're registered with the
if
So you
the
must have
family,
something that shows that your students are registered as being homeschool students in
Yeah.
Watertown Area School District.
so
Why don't we
if your
just attach that
registrations
to-
were attached to the application,
Yeah.
then that would allow just those families to come in this particular group.
And make that a group E.
And based on this
Something like
list of who's getting free, I have no problem making that free myself.
Right.
I have no problem with that,
Yeah.
based on this group of this list here.
Mhm.
And I think that's a good way to manage it, I mean, there has to be something that can be attached to it.
Right, 'cause anybody'd be like, well, we're homeschoolers, there's some sort of proof that that's your intent. But maybe they could join your group. Say, well, there's a group, here's your.
Yeah, I mean, we're not closed to anybody else that has one, but if it's,
I would make
homeschooling
homeschoolers
time or
a
something,
E and
You probably have a network of people, and
Yeah.
They have to put their homeschooling registration on it.
Yeah, somewhat.
At that time.
Yeah, we might have to ask them to
right.
I might have to put that in the policy.
Yeah, but they'll have to be.
None of the other groups that show it's free to are saying.
Yeah.
Oh, I think.
I just disagree with the first.
I don't know, I think if, you have gun safety going on there, and most people want to come in, I would say maybe wait till we're done, inclusive of,
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily
But they're saying they're exclusive to, I just think it costs money to run the place too, and just.
Well, homeschool students, I mean, you legally have the right to join sports teams in the school district. We already give free time to ECFE. If you look at the Watertown Area School District ECFE site, it even says that, they support the fact that parents are the number one first teachers of their children. So if we're willing to give it free to ECFE, we give it free to registered homeschoolers.
Yep. I agree.
I would agree. I would agree with that, I don't have a problem with that, Church, I do think we have to put some sort of limit. I mean, you can't have it for the entire day, 5 days a week, right, and say no one else can see what I'm
No,
saying though,
But-
right? I mean, 'cause the point is, other people can't use it at that time, you
Where
know.
we could charge somebody.
But if you're only using it once every 2 weeks for a couple hours, and you know it's consistently on whatever day at whatever time,
And we talked too, that we're flexible, so if somebody else does rent it, I mean, you can bump us and we'll come another time. I mean, you know.
So Maggie, are you good continuing to get some of the language
Yeah.
set on there and add in some of that, and then
Yeah, and then
to
I'll bring it
council?
back to you guys.
Bring it to council so we can approve that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully by next council meeting, we should be able to get something in front of us and, if not free, reduce, I'm certain, but it seems
Mhm.
most are in agreement of free, but with, some of those details may come out at the council meeting. We can't take action at it.
Are you doing it just
general
one winter?
session.
Yes.
And then, is it every other week? For 4 hours?
Okay, and maybe you'll continue, if you need more
Yeah.
information, you'll continue to work with staff and work with
Yeah, we'll
the-
work with you guys to figure out everything.
Okay.
I could not just put it like it.
Anything else on?
I give you huge sum up for that. I can't even do homework. I've hired a tutor for that.
Anything more you need then, Maggie?
I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming in.
thank you.
Improvements to the community center.
Yes, I just quickly wanted to talk about this. Just looking at like the budget for the remainder of the year, I think we have about $7,000 for the community center still. Just wondering if we wanna make any improvements with that money this year. I know I have an audio visual company coming out to look at what it would take to update this, if we can just, I know Connor was looking at some equipment online, if it's just something simple, like getting new microphones and that's all. That's what they said they can look at if we can use what we got existing and just make minor improvements, or if we wanna make, or if, just based on what we want, kind of what we can get. And then I know Kyle's gonna help me put an estimate in for carpet and other things for next year. But just this year, we have gotten some feedback from people who have had weddings here. I know one of the things is chairs.
Yeah, I was
in
thinking
there.
about that yesterday, which is funny you put that on there, 'cause we were doing all the chairs for the fish fry, and some are like very old, it just looks
Yeah, I think like
horrible.
if people are using the community center, we want it to, them paying money to us, we want them to get quality.
I think we should start making some improvements, and if we have that money there, we should, chairs are needed, or some tables need to be replaced.
Don't forget about the safety glass too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
gonna be a couple $100, it sounds like.
Yeah,
300-400.
I think they're like, you can get them, I'm looking to see if there's a state contract that we can get them through, like since we'd ordered multiple, or quite a few. I think right now, the best I could find is like $12.50 a chair. So it would be like, if we did, 'cause right now for weddings, it's 400 chairs total. 400 occupancy. I don't know what the fish fry holds, like how many people. But I thought we would at least start with 400 chairs, or a little bit more than that, to cover these events but I was gonna look into that, but I just thought, I'll bring it to you guys anyways,
So, do we have an inventory of chairs? How many?
'Cause we have good chairs, 'cause I think what Luann was doing was when chairs would break, she'd replace them with the cream color chairs.
okay.
So there are good
Okay.
chairs in there.
Okay,
So we don't,
yeah, we don't wanna replace all of them.
no, so it would be a project where you could put the good chairs on the racks,
Connor?
Yeah.
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 Well, no, but like, 'cause when, the racks, when people just put them up, but you
Yeah.
could probably get a good count and put all the good chairs on a couple racks, and then you know that you only have to replace 2 racks of chairs. You do not have to replace all of them, because there are good chairs in there. They're the cream ones, but there's some brown ones, and they're real flimsy. some are, like, there's a couple broken ones in this closet. I only know this 'cause I was here yesterday doing chairs.
Yeah, that was my
Did they separate them at all when they put them away?
No,
They
they
don't?
just pile them on there, because it's too hard
So it
to.
just takes someone to go
Yeah.
in and just kind of do some
Where they lay.
organizing and separate the bad ones and try to replace them. I do know for sure that there's tables that need to be replaced. Some are really bad.
So I'm
And
good
they
with that. And I think we should, at future work sessions, start prioritizing what we feel are top priorities. I mean, I do think these microphones are horrible,
Yeah.
and people can't hear it when they watch it,
And I think
it
people
puts
are
a
watching
lisp-
them.
It puts a lisp into it, I
Can't
mean,
hear
think,
anything
but
Right.
that may be my priority, but not someone else's, so I think we should prioritize, get a good prioritization.
Yeah, I think they're gonna be out in the next couple
Good.
weeks.
Keep getting quotes for that stuff. Okay.
Well, that's what we should be using some of that rent money that we're getting from Kids Company, is to put the money back into the community center on the
Absolutely.
improvements, because
Absolutely.
Another thing I was thinking about, the gym lighting, it's high efficiency, old,
Come up with a
ugly
list.
lights. And Excel has some pretty good rebates for
Yeah.
LEDs, you can call them.
We should absolutely.
Yeah, maybe a bit of
Quote on
list.
that,
or one that pulls down.
because the more energy the old lights use, the bigger the rebate we get, so.
And when we look at overall revenue that's coming in now, with Kids Company being here, it makes me even less concerned giving it free to other things. I mean, they're taking up a lot of time now where other people can't use that community center. I don't mind opening it up. I mean, before they were here, our revenues were probably $2,000
Yeah.
a year, now we're at 30,000, so giving it
Turn that
free
money
to
back
other
in.
things now, I'm even more